I am live. We're just waiting for people to show up here. So it is December 7th, almost 12 o'clock, and I'm just waiting for people to log on. And you can shoot me some questions. Let me see if I can see who people are. Okay, there's one other person. Here, let's see. Bum, 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 bum. So I guess I will do a quick, I'll wait, actually, just wait until the first minute so people can fast forward this. They need to after. Anybody, if you're on, you can say hi in the chat box there. Let's see if it's working. I can say something too. I can say hi. There. Hi. Yeah, so just in the bottom right corner, you can drop your questions in and I will try and answer them as we go along. Oh, hi. It's always funny because you like sort of know who people are, but now it's like YouTube, so everybody has a different username too. Oh, I logged in like a minute and a half early, so so yes. Oh, I didn't know that. All right. So probably should have logged on this early. Now people will have to force forward through the first 2 minutes, but maybe I will use this chance to introduce myself so anybody watching afterwards can know what the heck this is. So this is my first Ask Me Anything in a while. I do these sort of regularly in my Moms at Work Insiders group, and I know that there's some insiders in here watching as well. So my name is Allison Venditti. I am a career coach. I am HR expert, at least that's what they like to call me. I'm an advocate for pay transparency and pay equity as well. And I run the group called Moms at Work. So we are Canada's largest group for working mothers at this time that I know of. And yeah, so how we're going to, I guess I should show you other things. I have 3 boys, 9, 7, and 2. I have been running my business since 2017. 2017, I started very part-time though. 2018, I had a baby. So that, you know, mucked things up a little bit, but I'm super happy with how it turned out. And I also have a cat, and her name is Tranceron, which my boys named her. So now you know that stuff. And for everybody who's watching, I made myself a new mug. It says, "Good morning. I see the assassins have failed." And Moms at Work on the back. So let's jump into it. Anybody have any questions that I can answer for them? We only have a couple people in here, so now you get lots of like one-on-one questions. Anything about resumes, small businesses, how I do what I do. I am an open book. Ask away. And if not, I will just keep talking about other things that you can look for. No questions. Okay, so people can ask away. I will talk a little bit about something that I've done that will be a great resource for people is that also on this YouTube channel are some videos that I recorded with people like the Pay Equity Commissioner of Canada, Karen Jensen, who talks about the new pay equity legislation that's coming down in 2021 for the feds. And so her video is live on there. She did some lovely slides about how it's going to impact your employers and the financial penalties, et cetera, that go along with that, and how to do pay equity in your company. And the other one is with, oh goodness. Now I can't remember. I got sidetracked. But we have a few different speakers who are talking about different things. Heather Krause is also a pay equity expert, and she works with companies with her company called We All Count, and that talks about pay equity. So we have a few more people in. Just jump in your questions and I will answer them. So Jamie says, I'm looking for a job that is closer to home, but also not as stressful as my previous project management role. Any ideas what I should be looking for? So I always tell people, I'm like, don't box yourself in to be like, I don't want it to be as stressful, because you won't have any idea. Even some small businesses are like, if they're badly run, are going to be more stressful than a big company. So I always tell people that, yes, closer to home is ideal, obviously, for many reasons. But in looking for jobs, you won't really know until you're like in the door and you see how they answer your questions. And these are great questions to answer in sort of screening things, to talk about what kind of support they have, what kind of other people are on the team, and you'll get a sense of how they work. A good question that people are asking during COVID, during interviews, is like, can you tell me about how you're supporting your employees during COVID? Right? That will give you a really good indication of what kind of company they are, without having to ask if they have flex time or what their family policies are, all those things. It's like, I think it's a perfect segue into finding out how you're going to do that, right? So I wouldn't narrow it down by the type of company. I would keep my options open, but yeah, for sure, closer to home is great. And a lot of companies, as you know, are doing like even, hybrid remote roles. So, even if it might be a little bit further, but you only have to go in 2 days a week, that is a totally different role, right? Totally different. And also, if I don't answer all of your questions, you want to keep asking me questions, you can keep going, because really there's only 10 people here. So, so we've got lots of time in the next like half hour to answer all of your questions. Just drop them in. I will answer anything you want. And let me know if that answered your question, Jamie, because I think it did. But biggest challenge, any tips for career pivots, a change of industry, change of role? Biggest challenge is self-confidence, honestly. Lots of people do switches. Lots of people, we work a really long time. So the career that you started when you're 26 is not going to be the career that you end when you're 60, right? Or even 50. So most people, I think the number sits at like, they change jobs 7 times in their careers now. This isn't 1945, where if you're an accountant, you're an accountant forever. People tend to switch industries and roles. But the biggest challenge that I see with women is that lack of self-confidence, that sort of imposter syndrome, that I don't have all of the things. And we know specifically that women tend to wait until they have 100% of things in order to apply for jobs, and men it's closer to 60%. So in any given application pool, you're going to have less women applying for these roles, right? So I always encourage people to put it out there. As a recruiter, I would like you to know that even with 500 applicants, which I just hired for a role that had 500 applicants, about 25 of them had the qualifications I was looking for. That is a ridiculous number. So when you see those on LinkedIn and you're thinking, well, I don't have the exact thing they need, I'm like, do it anyway. Because you will likely, if you have the skills that we're looking for, will be called in. I hate watching women hold themselves back because they don't have anything, period, the end. Yes, so that's my biggest tip, is I'm like, go for it. I've made people socks that say ask for more, and I demand higher of my clients, right? I want you to do all of the things. The hardest part is getting out there. Katrina says, hope this question isn't too personal. Does your positivity, self-confidence, and fierceness come naturally? Or if not, how do you personally work on it? It's natural. I have been an advocate since I was born. So in addition to my work on like pay transparency and pay equity, I am one of those people who gets deeply passionate about a lot of things. So I also run a Facebook group called Parents of Kids with Food Allergies. 2 of my children have food allergies, anaphylactic. And so I'm an advocate in the food allergy space. I'll be very honest. I was raised by a mother who was extraordinarily passionate about her work. She was a kindergarten teacher and a special needs advocate. She decided to do her master's degree while she was starting treatment for terminal cancer. So this was my role model. My role model was the woman who was kind to every single person. You can ask any one of her friends that I don't think she ever said a like unkind word about anybody. She was unflinchingly honest. And part of my fierceness comes that like my mom was diagnosed when she had cancer when she was 40. My father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer when he was 41. I almost died from a head injury. My sense of the world is I'm like, I don't have time to mess around. I want to do lots of things and I'm going to do them right now. So that's sort of where that comes from. But I've always been that kid. My dad makes fun of me all the time. Jamie says, thanks. I just find that I don't know what keywords I should be entering. People always say, do what you love, but I don't know what I love. Okay, so the do what you love, and this is coming from a woman who runs a company called Careerlove. About 10% of people have passion for something. The other 90% don't. So if you can't list like 5 things that you're passionate about, and most people don't, it's this cult of entrepreneurism where like everybody's like, love what you do what you love. And that's like my logo, right? But I'm like, it takes some time to get there, right? And not everything that you like has to be a job, right? Like if you love knitting, you don't have to run a knitting company. You can just love knitting. But I think it's really unfair, this sort of like constant barrage of you need to have passion and passion and passion. It's like, well, sometimes you might just want to like have a really great job with nice coworkers where you're making some impact, and then you go home and spend time with your kids and like go away in the summer, right? That's it. I think we're really, really hard on ourselves, and we compare ourselves to people who, are not the same, right? Or even, like I try really hard to showcase the things that I'm not, so that people understand that like it's not all like bubbles and rainbows. This is some hard shit, right? And keywords for entering, I think, and I'm a big advocate of like, well, stop going on LinkedIn to find out what you want and go and talk to people. If you're interested in healthcare, go in the Moms at Work group and be like, hey, I'm looking at switching to project management and healthcare. Can anybody pick up the phone and have a cup of coffee with me so I can talk about what it's actually like? Because I'm really not sure. You can't apply for things if you're not sure. That's the whole purpose of Moms at Work, is so that we can be each other's support network, and you can do the legwork before you make the transition. It's just way faster, and it's also way better that you're not wasting your time in something that looks good on the outside but really isn't on the inside. Kelsey says, I'm feeling a little stuck about where to go in my career. I'm looking for some advice on how to assess my options, recommendations on how to get started. Okay, so I will launch this here. I have taken the questions that I have been asked most often: career change, returning to work after a career break, salary negotiation, whatever. And I made a bunch of like mini courses. So they're like, I'm going to put them out in January for $9 each, because the number one thing I see with women is they struggle to get started. So they struggle to ask themselves those questions. And in terms of where you want to go in your career, you do not start with the question of what do I want to do? You have to backtrack that and say, how do I want to do it? So the first part of that question about career needs to stop trying to put yourself in a box of a job, like a specific job, and take some time and think about the things that you like, the things that you don't like. Do you like working on a team? Do you like working by yourself? Do you like a big company? Do you like a small company? Those sort of things will drive where you end up going in your career, but you have to really be aware of what you want. I want to be home. When I started talking about the things that I wanted, I had some really hard things that I wanted to do. For the first year of my business, I didn't work Mondays because I really, really, really had come to hate Mondays, and I didn't. The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to pick up my children from school, for no other reason than that's something that I really, really wanted to do. And so I have never worked past 2:00. That might seem idealized, but I was also coming off a major head injury and had very little clue of what I wanted. So I set some guidelines for how I wanted my work to work, as opposed to specifically what I wanted to do. Okay, so I recently had an interview with an organization that doesn't align with my values. Ugh. I got my job, but it's not for me. It was the first interview I've had in years, and I thought it would be good practice. Any suggestion for ways in which to let them know that it's not a good fit and to potentially leave the door open for short-term consulting opportunities? I would just say that. I said, as an interviewer, I really appreciate, you don't need to go out and say that you're like not a great fit, but just be like, at this point, I'm at this point, I would be open to, I've decided, so you can sound like you're not just dumping them. I've decided that I'm not going to be pursuing this type of full-time role, which means you, not another person. But would really love to be kept in mind for short-term consulting work if that's something that you have available. So I would keep it really positive and sort of light. You don't have to like drill down the things that you don't like about them. But when the time comes and you find a better one, like at least you've left the door open. So just be honest. Say, you know what, at this time, this isn't the type of role I'm looking for. I've had it, I've thought about it, long and hard. Thank you so much for the opportunity, right? There's nothing else that we really need you. We're not going to be super offended. It happens all the time. Mara says, hi, I noticed that in my work environment engineer, expressing verbally in technical terms is a key influencing others. How can I develop the skills? Any learning activities, thank you. Okay, so I am married to an engineer. All of my friends are engineers. The skill of being able to convert technical terms into like English, as I always say it, because I work with a lot of programmers too, is like one of the defining skills for moving into management, because it's so important to be able to express to clients who may not be technical, or even like non-technical staff. Nobody likes to feel dumb because they don't know all the technical terms. In terms of courses, instead of like focusing on that, I would go for communication courses. So, you know, written communications, they have communication certificates. Like I would really focus on like how to write these things. They have like at Ryerson has like technical communication courses that are designed for these types of things, but they're pretty common. It's a skill set that they want to do whatever. And as an engineer, actually, you might want to talk to HR and ask if they have any recommendations for courses, because it's one of the number one things that we have on our Rolodex. Working in technical fields, right, is usually some internal training programs or things that might be available. Other than that, I would go after the like technical colleges like Ryerson. Even U of T has a continuing studies communication thing. I think it's an important skill. I think you're right to do that. Okay. I'm looking to restart my career after 7 years. I did a data science certificate last year. I have been applying a lot, but not getting anywhere. Any pointers on how to go further on this? I'm going to go back to what I said before, which is I'm like, you all need to really, really utilize the network that you have at your disposal with Moms at Work. And I know that there's data scientists in there. I think you already asked, whatever. But it's important when you have those conversations, not to just be like, get the information, say thank you, and leave, is to develop a relationship. So I do a networking course that I have on. I think it's on my Careerlove site. It's networking is not a natural thing, right? But there are ways to do it, and you're trying to build relationships. So when you go and you're asking people to have a coffee to talk about, you know, roles in data science, is to, you know, ask them what they enjoy, ask them for recommendations on where you can go next, ask them if they have someone else you can speak to, and make sure you follow up with them, right? I've had all sorts of coffee chats with people who have never followed up with me. And that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be like, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes of my time chatting with you about this thing. Like, I'd love to know where you're going or what you're doing. Tell me that you got a job. You know, those contacts are supposed to be around for a lot longer. And people always ask me how my network is so big, and I'm like, if you follow up with people, it's kind of like a snowball effect, right? Because then they introduce you to their people and so on and so forth. So data science certificate is great. I would ask some of those people also, like, what things they think that you're missing or what things you could be doing differently. This is the time to ask, right? All those questions that you can't ask, you know, and wonder why you're not getting called for interviews. These people can answer for you, right? And I think I saw your post that you got a few bites for talking about those things. So I hope that answers some of it. You guys can keep, if it's not all the answer, just like come back to me. Diversity and inclusion jobs seem to be where every employer is trying to hire now. Are there any other trend roles or specialties that you see in the workforce in need of right now? I think that communications is going to continue to be a big one, because when what funnels down from diversity and inclusion is a need to communicate those objectives and communicate those changes well. I think social media is going to continue to blow up. I think that there's new platforms coming down. Clubhouse is just starting. It's going to be the next big thing, right? Like, so it's like a chat room with all sorts of people. I think that diversity and inclusion in terms of supporting and growing women in your organization is going to be huge and continue to be huge. And I think that, what was the other one I was thinking of? Training and development, because of all of these changes, are also going to continue to grow. So really sort of people-centered roles, and then more like technical, like social media and marketing type things are going to continue to grow, just because it's like ever changing. So people who are at the forefront, so even people who are new marketers, new social media people, are going to be more in demand than someone who's been doing it maybe 15 years and doesn't have a new skill set. Jamie's also said it's accessibility. So Jamie says accessibility is going to be huge. So accessibility, I'm going to sort of like disagree a little bit because I work in accessibility, and really because of all the accessibility laws that have come into, like, the last 3 years have been all about accessibility. So it's kind of like the train is kind of already like shipped. I think accessibility in terms of like online spaces is really big, but the Canadian accessibility laws have been like sort of put into force, and all the accessibility experts have like put in the pieces. So accessibility in terms of like HR, in terms of communications, and in terms of like online presence will continue to be there. There is not a whole ton of experts in accessibility, and there tends to be a lot of like fairly technical background and legal background in accessibility. But some people work in like student services and things like that as well. So those are sort of the things, like the key trends we're seeing. There's going to be more need in terms of like accounting, bookkeeping, because of the surge in sort of entrepreneurship. So services that are supporting small and medium-sized businesses are going to continue to be like a thing. So anybody looking at sort of like starting a part-time job, virtual assistants, those types of things are just like growing and growing and growing. You know, like people always ask me, I'm like, I have a team. I'm like, it's not just me. I have someone who helps me with social media and writing because of my brain injury. I need some help. I have a woman who does my website who is amazing, who updates those things. And I have someone who does like graphic design and photography to help me out as well. And I have a bookkeeper. So it's not just me. My connection was unstable. So I think those types of things supporting small businesses, and there's also going to be a lot of like funding continuing to be shoveled down from the federal government to support small businesses, right? So those types of things are going to continue to be interesting, right? Mm-hmm. But you're not wrong about diversity and inclusion. Like suddenly everybody's jumped on board and jumped up and down. My question, this is going to be a little judgy, is, you know, everybody's flocking to diversity and inclusion, but will those continue to be high priority items 5 years from now? I don't know. I'm hoping that it will. I'm hoping that there will be like mandates toward it. But it was shocking, all the diversity and inclusion jobs that come up, and I'm like, there's just not that many people in the space, right? There just weren't that many diversity and inclusion specialists in there. But York has a certificate that looks pretty good. The Diversity Institute has lots of like short courses. Heather Krause has a course in her company called Wheel Count that talks about pay equity. Super great for like $400. I'm trying to get a discount for moms at work right now, actually. But I think really like shifting that it's not just diversity inclusion, but the groups that you want to impact and support is really important, right? So if you can narrow down, if you're talking about Indigenous or, you know, women or people of color, or, you know, which kinds of areas you do. Some will create a generalist role, but some places will be, you know, pretty impressed if you get specific on the types of changes you want to be making. Other questions? We still have like 15 minutes left. Shoot, anything. I mean, anything. You can ask me anything about how I run my business or all of those other things. I don't mind. You can ask me whatever you want. And there's 18 people watching, so I know you have questions, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. The other thing I'm going to say is like, pandemic, this is like, and, you know, everybody's like, this is unprecedented, but it truly is. And I think people, especially moms, we're being really hard on ourselves, right? Like, I have expectations for things that I wanted to do. And you know what? Like with the shift in like school, I'm potentially going to have all 3 kids home for like 2 weeks at a time. And that, I think, is like, I think for me that, like, when they said that, it upset me more than I thought it would. Because I sort of felt intrinsically like, here we go again, this is all on me. Like, there are no options other than like keeping the kids home. And I get that it's a pandemic, but it still says, like, it still feels so heavy, right? That this is being pushed on us again. Do you think a website is the best way to launch a business, or do you think a Facebook page is better? You have to have a website. Done. You can't get on Google without a website. You can't get whatever, you have to have a website first so that people know what you do, right? And you know what? Less and less people are on Facebook nowadays. So especially if anybody, you want to work with anybody under the age of like 30, even like 30, 32, you're gonna have to like get off Facebook and get on other things. So I always like, and my social media person always like screams at me. She doesn't actually scream at me. But yeah, it's important to have a website. So anybody who wants to know who does my website, her name is Shona McTavish. If you want her name, send me a PM. She's amazing, reasonably priced for the amazingness that she does. The one thing I wish I had done when I had started my business was not spend 500 hours trying to build my own stupid website. I spent all my time doing that. If I had just paid Shona at the beginning, I would be a different person. Did I learn some stuff? Yeah. Was it worth it? No. Could she have taught me that same stuff in like an hour? Yes. So that's my advice for websites. It's like, get someone who's ready to teach you, someone who has a UX background for user experience. That's it. Okay. So Stacey says, going from entrepreneurship to traditional work is proving to be a challenge. Do you have advice on the shift? Any shift is a challenge. Any shift, shifting industries, going back to work after mat leave, is going to be a challenge. And this is, and I say it to everybody, I'm like, you're not 22 anymore. So it's not just put together in my administrative application and trying to find a break-in admin job where there's probably 800 jobs. When you've been working in the workforce for a while, it takes longer. Period. The end. There's no like special magic wand that we can wave. Typically, and when we see this from the Moms at Work group, from the Insiders group, whatever, it's like even getting to the point where you're like getting interviews is, hard when you're like just applying to things. And so, it's important to apply for things mostly for our mental health, to be like, at least I'm putting in applications for this thing. But you're going to discover on the way the things that are more important to you. And I just talked to someone this morning. I'm like, the important part is that like continuing to pitch yourself. We work with some pretty incredible women who are hard to pin down as to what exactly their perfect skill set is or what exactly that perfect job is. And it may not be even in a great job description. So it's important to continue to go out there and connect with people who are doing really cool stuff, who are doing cool stuff, who are working for like organizations that doing whatever, and finding a contact there. So it's like nothing I haven't said before. But like moving from entrepreneur to regular job, I don't think is the issue. It's sort of like the process of any sort of mid-career, later career shift is that you've got a lot of experience. You're applying for jobs that pay way more money. And they're just not going to be as plentiful. So it takes a little bit more time. And, like between 3 and 6 months is going to be like sort of a staple before you start getting some churn and getting a really good idea of what you want, and what value you add to places. And you have an incredible skill set, and this. That is sometimes hard to translate onto paper. So it's important that you get in front of people, because when you get in front of people, they're going to be thinking about what job to give you, how they could use you in their organization. And it might not be a bad idea to, to help boost this, to look at some contract stuff, to look at some short contract, look at some 6-week stuff, to like get some, not even for like money or anything, but just to get some really positive, reinforcement, and that what you're doing is really helpful. And, maybe at that point, then looking at organizations and then pitching them as a consultant, right? Like simultaneously. Okay. So that's my thing for that. Got about 8 more minutes. Come on, people, give me your questions. Ask me why my bike doesn't work, won't connect to Bluetooth. So it's sitting there being very sad, very sad. Yep, happy to answer any questions about resumes or self-employment or anything. Oh, now everybody's getting shy, or just maybe taking a long time to type. So, and I want to remind people that like it's just hard, right? Some of this is hard. Do you think older women are at a disadvantage for finding a new job? I'm 43. God, I hope not. how else are you going to get 15 years experience? Everybody. So as women, we move from this, like, you're too young to you're too old, right? Right. Like, there is no like middle age for women. Right. So this is the issue. I'm like, I work with clients who are like, I am having a hard time being taken seriously. They think I'm too young and inexperienced, which then shifts to like, am I too old? Right. Like, there's no sort of like happy medium. But I mean, like, I always tell people, I'm like, or my dad has told me, he was like, this isn't even like the main part of your career. When you really start making money is like when you're in your 50s, right? Like when you have like 20 years experience under your belt and your brain is worth a lot of money, right? So that's what I'm going to say. I'm like, no, I don't think you're too old. Do I think that you may struggle if you go and interview in front of like 2 20-year-olds who don't get you? Yeah, for sure. Right. Do I think that you're going to struggle finding a job in healthcare? No, because guess who's hiring? Me, also 40. I actually tell people, like, you have to have a font of over 11, because if the people on our hiring committee can't read your resume, then we're going to throw it in the garbage. And that's because people at my age and older are getting bifocals now. So you have to, like, you are not too old. I don't think that's an issue. I think that when we're applying for mid-level jobs, I'm like, that's an expectation. You cannot get 20 years from someone who is like 15, right? Boom. Older women, thank you for experience. Okay, me too. Now that you mentioned contracting, what are the aspects to look at if one is in a good situation with the permanent job? You mentioned contracting. Okay. Sorry, Mara, I don't know really what that means for contract. Let me know what you mean about, do you mean moving to doing contract work as if you have a permanent job? Let me know again. The profile portion of your resume, what should be put in there? How do you introduce yourself to encourage a person to read further? It's not about encouraging read further because it's supposed to be like exciting and whatever. It's just a quick summary of who you are. So those look like, and there's tons of samples online that are like, they're fairly standard. It's like experienced HR professional with over 10 years experience, managing collective bargaining. And then I usually put a couple keywords in there. So I just want to know that you have the skills that I want before I'm going to go any further. So just tell me how many years of experience you have. Tell me the things that you've done. Tell me the software that you know in like 4 lines, because the only thing when they're talking about having like 7 seconds to look at a resume, that is the section I look at. I'll be very honest. I'm looking to see if you're nearby so that you can come in during a snowstorm. It is totally discriminatory that people do this. They judge you on where you live, but it happens. So I always tell people to leave their address off. I tell them just to put their LinkedIn and their name and phone number. And then your profile. But I know that people don't get called in if they live like 4 hours away, or if we think that they have to move, right? So if you don't update your address, if you're applying from BC, like, we don't want the hassle of having to like move people. So make sure you update those types of things so that they're relevant. And then the profile is like really 4 lines of just a quick snapshot of who you are and what you do, right? Tell us about your experience, struggles building your own business from scratch. Okay. Well, I'm like, I think I'm different than most people. I think I'm not a terribly great example. I'm like, I didn't recover from a traumatic brain injury. My LTD provider told me that I would never be able to work full time. And they offered me a package to get me off LTD, which I took because I also didn't want to be on LTD for the rest of my life. So I took it with the understanding that I needed to be my own person and, identify with a career, or else I would like crumble and fall into like little pieces. So when I started Careerlove, which my story is, I'm like, I put $100 on a Starbucks card, and I went and I started meeting with people, and I took notes. And at the end of it, I never sell anybody anything. I don't meet with you. I met with a coach, and it was the worst thing ever. I just wanted to like get to know her, and maybe we had something in common and we could have some coffee. And she kept saying, "Oh, I want to coach you. I just want to coach you." I was like, this is weird and really unappealing. And the internet sells to you all the time. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to work with people who want to work with me. So the struggle at the beginning was I was lonely. So I was meeting with all these people, but I didn't have any like people. So I found other entrepreneurs who sort of like helped me. And it was really stunning to see all of the different things that we were all trying to figure out all at the same time. Like there's a lot coming at you. And if you think like working for yourself, like I wanted to be a career coach, I probably spent 20% of my time career coaching and 80% of my time running my business. So there's different ways to do that. And if you don't want to run your own business, you can work for somebody else, right? Like as a contractor. But where you start will not be where you end up. So when I started, I had this website. I was going to work with retirees. I could offer my services to new grads. But I had a page that said, that talked about career shifting for moms, and it's stuck hard. So almost all my clients were coming in because they said, I read that web page and it really spoke to me. That page spoke to me. I want to work with you. And so that's really how I started. I started it slow. I didn't have the expectation that it would make me $100,000 in the first year. I just really wanted to be doing something that made a difference to people, and get on my feet again. So my ramp up was really slow in terms of like how I was doing my business. And then once I knew who I was and what I could do the next year, then it sort of like, then I took the cap off it and let myself go harder. Let me see here. So that's my long-winded version of what it is. Can you talk about tips for a good resume, like ground rules or big no-nos? I don't like functional resumes. I know that you may have gaps in your resume, and I still don't care. So functional resumes are just like you chunking out like the things you're good at as opposed to like the work that you do. Recruiters aren't stupid. We're going to see through that. And honestly, like everybody has breaks in their resume now because of this whole like gig economy. It's not what I recommend, right? Like you can talk about things and you can talk about your break, but you don't need to focus on it. Like it's there, you're not going to hide it. So I'm like, you're going to have to go after it. Resume no-nos, don't put a picture. I don't like pictures. You don't need to put a picture on there. It needs to be easy to read. So don't make anything smaller than like an 11-point font, please. Usually 2 pages is good. You don't have to shove everything on 1 page. What else? You have to have a profile, and really good section underneath the profile is then you have a keyword section underneath that. Really for your resume, all those keywords are supposed to be changing, not the context of your resume. So like I said, I'm going to be putting out some of my mini courses, and every January I always put on sale my like land your next job courses, just FYI. For people who are job hunting. So I put together all of those things just to like, and with templates and all the other stuff for you, because it's really like its own, each of those courses like 30 minutes, plus some templates. So it's a good place to get that kind of thing at like a pretty reasonable option. Oh yes, moving from a comfortable job into a contract position. I think you have to be really honest about what the challenges are going to be, because contracts, like you have to move from contract to contract. If it's helping you start a new thing, that's like very different. So again, I always look at your reasoning for what it's going to provide for you, right? Don't think about the job, think about the reasoning and what you're going to be doing, right? It's hard to give up a comfortable job. Do you have any insights on applying to companies or positions not necessarily based in Canada now that remote work may be opening up to new opportunities? Yes. So AngelList, there's lots of remote work options. Most of them will hire you as a contractor though. So there's a lot of issues with the US, and like Biden will likely change a lot of this, but like the Trump administration put up a lot of roadblocks for people working for immigration and for visas. So, but there's lots of remote work websites, and there's lots of places like even in Canada, like Thinkific or whatever, that do have like almost an entirely remote base, if that makes sense. So there is, actually, and that's not even a sell. I registered a workbook called Finding and Landing Remote Work, because, and it talks about opening up like those things. So let me finish writing that, but I'm listing all the like sites and things that I usually recommend, like AngelList, like Remote Work How, that are usually really helpful, right? Like it's specific sites I would go after. So you'll see what kind of companies are open to it, so that you're not wasting your time applying to ones that are not open to Canadian applicants, right? It's a tax nightmare too. Yeah, working in the States is also like really hard tax-wise because you have to pay different taxes. So you will have to likely like write that into the write that into the contract that you'll need Susan to work for you to help you like sort of navigate those waters working for the States. I have clients who work in Europe and whatever. So just pay attention to those things before you go running down that path. But yeah, being paid in US money is nice, right? Okie doke. Last couple questions and then I'm out of here, and I will save this and post it up after. Okay, that works. Everybody good? Final questions? Anything? No? I think maybe I'll let it land off because a lot of people are here because they want to know how I do what I do. And yes, I am normally this passionate. Yes, I am this person. Have I become more passionate as I've gotten older? Yes, absolutely. I also have more energy because my children are sleeping now. But all that to say is that like starting a business is hard. Lots of businesses fail. You're not a failure if it takes you a long time to get where you're going. You know, like everybody hates Jeff Bezos, but like the man invested every penny that he made into like shipping things and new warehouses and whatever. So he didn't make any money for a long time. So like it doesn't happen immediately, but you need to be very clear on what you're going to need to do and what kind of money you're going to need to make in order to keep going. I had to sit down. Finance is not something that I struggle with. My dad was an accountant. My sister's an accountant. I do financial forecasting for years ahead. But I knew exactly how much money I needed to make in order to pay for childcare, in order to do whatever. And I had goals. So having goals and knowing how much you need to be making and what you need to be doing, and keeping that conversation really honest, is important. Also, I spend about 30% of my income, maybe 35% on expenses. So it is not an insignificant chunk of money that you're going to be shoveling back out. And that's like not including taxes, right? Like for just expenses. So it's really important to get a really good handle on the kind of money that you need to be making, whether you're going to keep your full-time job and start another company, which is probably how I would have done it had I had the option. And then pick a go time that you're doing certain things and then you're going to jump into it. So yeah, that's my thing. Yes, I do have this much energy. Yes, I do all of these things all the time. Yes, I am that person who like does things at school and puts on fundraisers or whatever. Like I move at a very quick pace. For anybody who knows me, they know that to be true. Do most other people function like that? Not really. But I tried mindfulness. My dad's big into mindfulness. I tried other things and I'm really happy moving like this, right? I like to keep moving and I like to keep doing things, and that's my happy space. Do I know how to do puzzles? Yes. Do I know how to relax? Yes. But I find my happy spot is this like in the middle where I'm like, I continue to buzz. Just so that people know that this is not necessarily like a thing that normal people do. That's just how I function. It's a bit weird. But my mom was the same way. My mom was the exact same way. So she's my example for so many things. And yeah, so a lot of what I've done is because my mother wanted me, and my mom had a whole list of things for me that I wanted to do. My mom died when I was 24. And so those are important to me and they keep me going. So on that light note, that's it. So I will post this up in case you missed the beginning of it. And have a really great Monday, everybody. And hopefully I'll see you in the group soon. Bye.